we can continue this conversation for such a long time, but I might wrap up in the interest of time and acknowledgement of where you are across the globe. And it's pretty late, I know, for you, Jeremy, for our friends in the US as well. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending this Geoethics seminar on emerging location-based services and technologies, geosurveillance and social justice issues. This ethics series, as Jeremy mentioned, is sponsored by the American Association of Geographers in partnership with the Center for Spatial Studies at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and also in support, or with the support of Esri. So thank you to the sponsors. I'm delighted to be closing this webinar, and I think the exceptional presentations today have really set a solid foundation for us moving forth in terms of thinking about a range of themes that are relevant to location-enabled technologies and solutions and their applicability to social justice issues. I'd just like to briefly, before closing, reflect on the wonderful talks that I heard today, and I'm really looking forward to viewing the recordings of those I missed in the breakout rooms. I also want to pick up on the transdisciplinary comments mentioned by Marcus, which I covered briefly in my talk in terms of the elements of a transdisciplinary approach. But first, I think Jemima mentioned something really important now about lived experience, and I would really like to highlight a few things, beginning with Jeremy's talk and the opening and the mention of lived experience. And I know I've had discussions with Jeremy, and he does mention the lived experience of stakeholders and lived expertise, and I think that's something that should anchor future discussions. Move on to Roger, who also addressed privacy in terms of personal experience, or privacy of personal experience. And that led nicely onto Steve's emphasis, where he spoke about secrecy of design and access to the inner workings of a system. And we can start to see really bits of the puzzle emerging and sort of gelling together. When MG Michael delivered his wonderful talk this morning, he mentioned, in referencing Marcus's work, the importance of the context of uberveillance, and then we returned to lived experience with Christine, and themes around opting in and involuntariness really emerged there that I think we really need to build upon in future discussions. In our breakout rooms, Jason developed with attendees a word cloud demonstrating the importance of empathy and care, and they were the dominant themes in that word cloud. And right now we heard that brilliant talk from Jemima on education, ethical training, code of ethics as relating to GIS practitioners. And back to the emerging themes of all the themes that have sort of taken away from this webinar on transdisciplinarity, ethics, values, and specifically lived experience. The poem "The Blind Men and the Elephant" by John Godfrey Sachs, for those of you who have heard of it, which was written in the 19th century, came to mind. And I'd like to end on lessons from that, pointing to a potential path forward, or paths forward. So this poem points to a number of themes that summarize, to me at least, the flavour of today's webinar. Many versions of this story exist, but for our purposes today, if I may, I might just read an excerpt from the poem, drawing out some important concepts in the context of geoethics, location-based services, and social justice. And it goes like this. So it was 6 men of Indostan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, "God bless me, but this elephant is very like a wall." And then we go on. The second, feeling the tusk, cried, "Ho, what have we here, so very round and smooth and sharp? To me, 'tis mighty clear, this wonder of an elephant is very like a spear." So as we go on through this poem, with the third likening the elephant to a snake, the fourth to a tree, the fifth to a fan, and the sixth to a rope, the poem ends with this. "And so these men of Indostan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion exceeding stiff and strong, that each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong." So in the context of this webinar, I think this poem points to many things and lessons, a few of which I'd like to list here. So the first to me relates to the way in which we conceptualize and scope systems, particularly at scale or at the societal level, by emphasizing certain elements of the system, particularly within our the frame of our own disciplinary perspectives and potentially looking or overlooking, others. And this not only results in a partial account of a given system or the elephant, but an inaccurate one in which complexity is not really accounted for. And this is a requirement in transdisciplinary work and in moving, I think, forward within the context of themes here today. The poem also highlights or points to the significance of conceptualization through touch, highlighting with respect to location-based services, for example, the worth of user experience and usability contexts. I think importantly, it also addresses issues of limited and subjective experience and the implications on truth, meaning-making and knowledge creation, again tying into requirements or elements from transdisciplinary framework. And this ties to the idea of scope that I mentioned earlier and the challenges that I think stem from partial consideration of problems or challenges such as geosurveillance and social justice. Additionally, I think the poem talks to the implications of disregarding the limited subjective experience of others, whereby truth is based on a unidisciplinary or siloed perspective as opposed to inter or transdisciplinary, for example. And Marcus has pointed to some of the, the viewpoints around or the perspective on transdisciplinary work. And finally, we can extract from the blind man and the elephant the importance of perspective, lived experience and expertise. That is, and related to this webinar, the empowerment of users, the vulnerable, the underrepresented, and as we've heard from our presenters, accounting for these voices in a way that ensures that the design, development and implementation of location-enabled technologies and solutions work for the individuals in a manner that allows us to engage in proper human-centered design, where we're able to embed values of individuals, of communities and of society. And with that, I'd like to thank you all on behalf of my co-hosts, Professors Katina Michael and Jeremy Pitt, for joining us for this webinar. And a special thank you to the American Association of Geographers, the University of California, Santa Barbara, ESRI, Arizona State University, specifically the Society Policy Engineering Collective, the IEEE Society on the Social Implications of Technology, Imperial College London, University of Toronto, in Australia, the University of New South Wales, University of Wollongong, I'm almost there, and Swinburne University of Technology, Pivot for Humanity, Reset Tech, Connecting Stones, Ground Up Consulting, and Greater Than Learning. And I hope I haven't missed anyone there. And a massive thank you to the Association of the American Association of Geographers Logistics team, led by Colleen, Lisa, Oscar, Ellen, Giulatti, and you've done a wonderful job today. Thank you very much. And thank you to our wonderful and dedicated speakers and the attendees who've registered for this event, for your participation in discussions, and also for those of you who have stayed till the end. And we hope that this is the beginning of a shared journey as we make sense of location-based services and technologies, geosurveillance and social justice issues. Thank you, everyone. And good night and good afternoon to those of you in Australia. Thank you.